Hey, and also, I'll just say this, you can fight your pastor for it. Dustin, I'll put that fidget spinner somewhere. That you can,
Oh, I got it right.
you can fight your pastor for these things that, is about to be in their Better Together box at the very end of August. But we're sending all our pastors a fidget spinner, a free service. So
I love that.
if you think y'all are gonna want these for your, student ministry, just heads up, but all the pastors are getting that in August. But anybody like a fidget spinner students, do that. Well, they can do it with free service. To be able to share the faith for that. So, be a resource. He has some resources for a year plus some journals on the back. So Dustin, all yours.
All right, what's up, guys? My name is Dustin. Glad to be here with you tonight. There's some handouts going around, so you can kind of, everybody likes a good fill in the blank, right? So we're gonna kind of walk through this, just kind of what we're talking through tonight, and then we'll have some resources that we'll kind of distribute kind of throughout our talk this evening. So before we get started, I want to know who's like in the room so that we know who we're talking to. So briefly give me, we're going to kind of do this super fast, but just like give me your name and like where you're serving, like are you on staff, volunteer, that type of stuff. So we're going to start here with Cole first.
So I'm Cole. I work with Dustin as an intern in student ministry at Hillcrest Baptist Church.
Very good.
I got it. I'm Dakota. I'm the youth minister at Gonzales Baptist Church.
My wife, Micaiah, who is also.
Who is also.
Yeah, we know how this works.
I'm Trevor. I'm a volunteer at Rachel Baptist Church. This is my fiance.
Congratulations. Super fun.
Nathan, pastor Reddish Chapel.
Hey, John, next generation's pastor of the Point Church. Kyle, I'm youth pastor at First Baptist.
We're like very early on.
July 3rd was the birthday.
Yeah, so he's.
Oh.
That's awesome. All right, let's see. Let's start up front because I'm going to point at weird people. I don't like to weirdly point.
My name is Dallas. I'm the youth pastor at First Baptist Crestview, and this is my wife. Alex, that's her name. Yeah, she does that one. I'm Jacob, Leader Day Baptist Church, and I'm a volunteer youth leader. This is my girlfriend / assistant.
Nice.
I'm John Godwin, wife Katie Godwin, youth minister at Walnut Hill Baptist Church in Haley, and Doug Shearer leading the girl worship team for our youth.
Okay, very cool. Very good. All right, one more.
I'm Simeon. I'm not a youth pastor or youth leader at all. I'm a student from USF. I was supposed to come with Quentin Eagle break from
Yes.
USF, but he's sick. So
We'll roast him for that later on.
Right.
If y'all remind me, I'll give you his cell phone number and all of us will text him at the same time. It'd be great. That's I'm kidding a little bit. Well, very good. Thank you for letting me know that. Kind of helps me know like who's in the room, what different roles. Let me introduce myself real quick. Again, I'm Dustin. I'm at Hillcrest Church right down the road. I serve there as the next gen pastor. Been at Hillcrest. October will be 6 years. What is the next gen pastor? That's a great question. Trying to figure that out still. I've been about a year into this role, and so we're figuring it out as we go. It's a great church. Love it very much. This is my wife, April. I have a picture of our family. So she's for sure the best looking one. Obviously, one of our children has a better tan than the rest of us. So this is Merrick. Merrick is going into 7th grade. He is about to be 13 years old. He loves food like none other. I've never seen anything eat as much as he does. And so ramen noodles is his favorite. So we're really killing the nutrition game in our house. And then Hollis is going into his sophomore year. So we're about to enter into the world of driving permits and getting new cars and all that. And it's super weird because I'm so young. He is probably, I'm biased, but he is the smartest kid I've ever met in my life. He passed me about 8 years ago. And he, for fun, right now, for fun, he is learning every Rubik's Cube that you can possibly come up with and all the algorithms and trying to tell me. And I'm like, bro, I'm like from the 80s, like we peeled the stickers, right? But like, so anyway. And April is my wife. We've been married for 17 years, and we've known each other really since we were like babies. We grew up in the same church, and April has, the Lord has just given us a new mission field. We're really excited about this upcoming year. She's going to be teaching 5th grade at a local school here in Pensacola that we're really excited about. So we have been doing ministry. April's family, her dad was our pastor, so she is a PK, and so she knows ministry. I started serving really when I say I gave my life to Christ when I was 20, 21, somewhere in that range, and immediately started serving in different capacities with kids ministry and with student ministry, and have done that really for the last 20 years. And we got married, and we were originally from Alabama. Should probably clarify that. Gives away the accent. And any other weird thing I say tonight. Got married in 2005. We moved to seminary up in North Carolina with Southeastern, and served a church there, did a student ministry. And then once we graduated seminary, yeah, we did that. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes. I'm talking about Wilson.
Oh.
Yeah. There was a seminary church that this is being recorded, I should say.
Yeah, just keep chatting.
Yeah, there's a seminary church, one of those seminaries you try to forget, what I mean? Like it's one of those experiences. It was great. And so, yeah, it was hard ministry. So we did that for a few years, graduated seminary, moved to the other side of North Carolina where we were doing kids and preschool ministry. And I thought that was it, like teenager smelled. I didn't want any part of that. Like I was going to do kids ministry from then on out. Did that for 4 or 5 years, and the Lord started moving in our heart, and we moved to back to Prattville, Alabama, our hometown, where we were serving, where God called us into student ministry, and could only be God, and because we again did not have a desire for that. Started student ministry there in Alabama and fell in love with it. It was great, and you guys are absolute heroes. And so it was at Prattville. We did that for a few years, and then moved to Hillcrest and did student ministry here up until last year, where I transitioned into this next gen pastor, where in this role I focus in on the 18 to 30-year-old demographic. It's kind of my primary ministry role, and then I supervise our student pastor, our kids pastor, and our preschool pastor. So kind of oversee the totality of our age graded ministries. So that's a little bit about me. So I'm telling you all of that because I want to talk through tonight just some kind of key components that I have experienced over the years, some hard lessons that I've had to learn, some things that I've learned that have worked very well, some things that I've learned that did not work very well. But before we get to anything practical, and I want to give you as much practical as possible. And I want to say this too, I'd love for us to have some open dialogue here. So at any point, I'm talking about something, you have a question, just throw your hand up and let's talk about it, right? And we'll kind of dialogue amongst ourselves. And if you're not, then maybe we'll have some time at the end and ask some questions too, okay? So, and again, Brian's already said this, context is everything. So, we've got a lot of different demographics in here, from volunteers to staff members to, different size churches and different size student ministries. And so, just keep that in mind as we're talking through these things. I'm going to try to keep that in mind as well. Okay. All right. But before we get to anything practical, I want to talk about what it takes to build a student ministry that endures. Okay. What it takes, because an enduring student ministry starts with an enduring student minister. I had a buddy of mine that shared 5 questions with me in the past, I think, that are really super important for you to put into practice, for you to put into place in your ministry and in your personal life. And I just want to share these questions with you real quickly so that you can kind of ask yourselves these questions regularly. And the first question is this: how's my character? How's my character? We constantly need to be working on our character, especially as in leadership roles within the church. Proverbs 4 says this way: above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Are you a minister of good character? Listen to this stat. 60% of people lie in a 10-minute conversation. 60% of people lie in a 10-minute conversation. You want to see that number rise? Go to any type of student ministry conference and start asking student pastors like how big their student ministry is, right? Like if we did that right here, we default to think about what is the largest event that we've ever had, and that kind of becomes our baseline number, right? We do this because we want to feel successful, right? We want to feel accepted. And sometimes this bleeds over into our relationships with our students, right? I've met student pastors in the past who will use the excuse of being relevant to youth culture as a reason to watch certain shows and as a reason to watch certain movies or listen to a certain type of music. And I want to tell you to be careful because these actions can change your character. Because see, there is never a reason to violate God's standards in order to seek or maintain his blessings.
Yes.
Carey Nieuwhof in his book, Didn't See It Coming, said it this way: all the competency in the world can't compensate for a lack of character. Your competency gets you in the door, but your character keeps you there. So you work twice as hard on your character as your competency, because your character, not your competency, will determine your capacity to endure in leadership. Right. Andy Stanley said at one time, we are always, and this is very eye-opening, but we are always, all of us are always one decision, one word, one post, one reaction away from damaging what has taken years to develop. And I'm not sharing anything, unfortunately, I am probably not sharing anything that's news to you. I imagine that every one of us could go person by person and we could name somebody that has made an impact on us in the ministry at some point that's no longer in the ministry because of a lapse in judgment, not taking care of themselves for whatever reason. And that reality should highlight and wave the warning flag for us. You know, ignoring the condition of your heart is essentially planning to fail. So know who you are. Be that person. Right? I am 42 years old. I gave up trying to be cool and trendy to these teenagers a long time ago. Right? I am now dad mode. And I'm good with that. I'm good with that. So don't try. All right. Second thing is this. How's my character? Number 2, how am I becoming jaded? In other words, am I using past hurt to define present relationships? Am I using past hurts? Like if you are in ministry long enough, you will inevitably start battling cynicism, right? You will become a cynic. Someone will hurt you. Someone will betray you. A student will make a mistake. You know, it used to kind of think this idea of like developing calluses, right? And in some way, that kind of feels right because you try to protect yourself from future hurt. But the reality is it's really just developing a jaded view of ministry. And when this happens, you'll stop seeing staff, you'll stop seeing volunteers and parents and students for who they are, and you'll just start seeing potential hurt. Like you'll put walls up, right? So that's a question to ask yourself. Am I being jaded? A third one is this: how am I aligned with my senior pastor? How am I aligned with the culture of our staff? What's your pastor's vision for the church? What's his vision? And you can define that sometimes by focusing in on maybe your pastor has shared his vision. Maybe he is sharing that with you and you are all on board with that. Or maybe you're in here and you've got, man, I'd love for my pastor to have Stephen talk to me, right? Like, let's just be real honest. But sometimes you can help identify his strengths by the things that he's passionate about, right? In other words, if he is gifted in evangelism, then that helps you to know, like, maybe I should, kind of develop some strategies in the student ministry that's going to line up with evangelism. Same thing, maybe it's discipleship, whatever the case may be. The point is, does your vision for your student ministry correlate? Does it match? Is it similar to your senior pastors? Because if not, it needs to be. It needs to be. You don't have to have regular meetings with your pastor to understand his vision for the church. How are you aligning around this? And I don't know, let's get crazy. If you don't know what it is, how about this? Take him to coffee and ask him. It's going to be pretty clear, if he hasn't. Like, your staff culture. It may be just you. It may be you and a kids man, or you and a worship person, or there may be multiple staff. How are you guys working together? At Hillcrest, one of the things that has worked for us is we've done one of the Strength Finders tests. That was a game changer for us because it helped us show one another like where we're strong. At the time, myself, as a student pastor, I had an associate student pastor, and he and I were pretty new working together. We did Strength Finders, and we realized that my top 3 strengths were his bottom 3, and his top 3 were my bottom 3. And it was like, wow, we are trying to force each other into boxes that's not. And so instead, we just kind of revamped everything. Like it was real quick, like that. I was more passionate about planning and like looking out. Like I want to know what we're doing this time next year. And he's like, man, I'm here in the moment. Like you can plan that. I want to hang out with students. I want to, just invest. I want to be in the schools. And so to try to force each one of us into those lanes was causing frustration. Strength Finders was a game changer for us. We're currently walking through this exercise called 5 Voices, where we are learning how to better communicate with the people on our team. It's a ridiculous thing. We're spinning our wheels if we think that everybody likes to be communicated to like we like to be communicated to. And so learn that, right? All right, number 4. Am I still curious? Am I willing to learn? See, here's the thing. All leaders are learners. Once you start learning, you will stop leading well. And so I would encourage you guys, like if you're on social media, you should be part of find some student ministry groups that are on Facebook. Just to hear what people are doing, just to read. You don't have to dialogue with those people, just to see if some of them I would dialogue with, honestly. But if you're not on them, if you'll join them tonight when you get home, you're going to see what I'm talking about. Download Youth Ministry. They've got a great online presence on social media. And I love Download Youth Ministry because it's going to introduce you to other people outside of your denomination, right? It's going to kind of broaden your horizon a little bit. But you can go out and just Google student ministry groups. You're going to find groups for volunteers. There's leadership emails that you can get. There's podcasts. Orange Leaders has some great podcasts out that I would encourage you to just constantly be in a state of learning. Just constantly be, right? Listen, if you, and I've caught myself in this before, but if you're looking at your student, you're looking at everything in student is culture, and your first reaction is to roll your eyes and be like, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. Well, it may be. So that doesn't discount that it's important to them. And if we want to minister to them, we need to figure out what those things are, right? So being curious, learning, it helps you understand a kid or a parent or a volunteer's backstory. Learn new skills, adapt to new changes in a way that you can. One of my favorite quotes I learned at a conference many years ago says, read less minds, ask more questions. Read less minds, ask more questions. Constantly be a person who's learning and is adapting. If you don't understand a trend, a current trend doesn't make sense to you, ask the student. Don't be afraid. There's been many times where I'm like, hey, I don't understand this thing on Instagram I'm seeing right now. What is it? What this acronym I'm seeing, what does that mean? What does that stand for? Like they're going to tell you. They would much rather tell you than you start talking about, oh, that was low key. And they're like, what? Don't, right? Like, I got a message just yesterday from one of our students who tagged me in something. And I said, the meme had this guy in a jean jacket. I said, I don't even own a jean jacket. And the student replied, well, I'm gonna get one for you. And so I replied, okay, bet. And I got a reply back, don't ever say that again. I said, okay, good to know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know, right? Learn these things, but ask the question. Like, it's fine. Like, and especially the older you get, the more, and I know this is hard because I've walked this road, but the more out of touch you're going to be with the trends. Don't figure it out on your own, just ask them, right? And the last one is this. Am I committed to stay? Am I committed to stay? The average stay for a youth pastor right now is about 5.5 years. But in those years, there's 2 or 3 different roles that the student minister takes on in a church. Are you willing to stay and adjust through that? Like, student ministry should not just be a stop on your journey for a different ministry. And because there's such a quick turnover with student pastors, like, you have a hard time getting buy-in from your students. If you're coming into a scenario to where there's been a gap between the former guy and you, like, that's going to take some time for you to earn that trust. If they've had to walk through something where there were numerous student pastors before you, it's going to take a little while for you to gain a voice with them, that they know that you are there for them. And I get it. I know that God can change your calling, and I believe firmly that there are definitely seasons in ministry, for sure. But honestly, student ministry needs pastors who are willing to stay committed to stay, who are like all in, even through the hard stuff. You know, you'll start to see some lasting fruit if you stay beyond 7 years. You can hit that 7-year mark, and you start seeing an entire class from the time they enter your student ministry to them graduating. You get to see them through all of that. You get to walk through the awkward middle school years and then transition into high school, and then you're dealing with driving. And listen, like, that's a win. That's a win. I've not experienced that in ministry until just this year. This is this class that's graduating, the class of, I guess, 23. It will be the first class in the duration of my ministry that I've been able to see from 7th grade or 6th grade all the way through. When we arrived to Hillcrest, this group that's going to be a senior this year, they were in 6th grade. And one of the things that we've noticed, because Jeremy and I both, we stepped in, Jeremy's our associate, whenever we started 1 week apart from one another. And when we stepped into that ministry, it had been through a cycle of several different leaders in a short amount of time. And it's taken a while. What we saw was this trend of starting about middle of 9th grade, 10th grade year, whenever they could start driving, our attendance just plummeted for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. We're real heavy middle school, but 10th grade, man, it's just, where'd they go? They just disappeared. And over time, over these past 7 years, we've seen that trend change to where now it's pretty consistent across the board, because they know we're there and they know we care about them. They know we're invested into their lives. And so, are you committed to stay? Are you committed to stay? All right, so that's kind of a brief look at some areas to put in practice to make sure you are an enduring minister. But I want to take the next few minutes and talk about some evaluations you can put in place to make sure you are developing an enduring ministry. We've talked about the minister, now we're talking about the ministry. Now, God may call you to a new place of service one day. Today, you should be striving to make your ministry reproducible. What are you developing? What are you writing down for the next guy to run with you, to run with after you someday? So it's kind of a slippery slope. You don't want to, you want to stick around, but like, what happens when God does call you? You don't want that ministry to collapse. If that ministry collapses after you leave, that means you build that ministry around yourself, right? We want to develop ministries that are there for the long term. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, how you can do that a little bit more practically here in a little bit. But, I've done this. Hillcrest is our 3rd church that we've been in. And in each one of the previous 2 churches, man, I have left them with a binder that's this thick that was literally like, here, plug and play from everything you need to know. And our church in North Carolina, we left, they literally used that binder for the next year while they were looking for the next kids pastor to come along, right? So the point is, an enduring student ministry endures long after you're gone. Long after you're gone. So here's some metrics for you to kind of to grade that by. How's the ministry aligned with other ministries in the church? How is your student ministry lined up with other ministries in the church? For instance, what are you doing to partner with the worship ministry? Maybe it's for us. One of the things we do is that every Christmas for our big Christmas program, we encourage students to sing as part of some sort of either a student choir for that season or join the main worship team, because that's important to our worship ministry. So what are you doing to encourage that, growth? We have growth, what we call growth groups, which are basically like discipleship groups that happen during the week. How are you partnering with your education guy to say, hey, like, let's do some parenting classes. Like, I'm seeing this from our students, or I'm hearing this from our parents. What can we do to come up alongside of parents that's supporting their ministry as well, as far as the Connect ministry or whatever? Make sure you're connecting. How are you working alongside the kids ministry? How are you helping move students onto young adults and college ministry? What are you doing with that? What's your church's mission, their purpose statement? Is your student ministry statement close to that? Our statement at Hillcrest that this is what drives the boat for us. Hillcrest exists to help people in becoming like Christ, who worship God, who connect with others, who serve the world, and who invest in someone. We are literally right in the middle of walking our students through these 4 pillars of our mission statement. I just taught this past Tuesday night on investing in someone. Or Tuesday morning, I'm sorry, on investing in somebody. What does it look like to invest in people? And teaching the students, you invest in them by gospel conversations and by giving them some, if you're going to sit down and study scripture together, here's some tools to use to study, for you guys to be studying and discipling one another. We want to make disciples who make disciples. And so we're literally walking our students through this right now. And why do we do that? Because here's the thing, if our student ministry values are different or they push against these, then we're going to have a problem. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to get in, this is going to be kind of difficult because the room's laid out like this, but I want you to kind of just grab you and 2 other people, y'all are going to be like a team of 3, okay? So you don't have to talk or anything, just look at each other and just hey, you're my third, right? Or you got 3 right here. All right, you got any little pods of 3? Okay, good. Like right now, find your third person. All right? All right, so here's what I want you to do. All right, you can't talk to one another. You got to put your hands under the table. And I'm going to call out a number. And without you talking to one another, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, and you're going to pick your hands up. And whatever number fingers you want to hold up, you hold up. And the other 2 people in your team are going to do the same thing. We're going to count those numbers up and see if you can equal what number I just said. Does that make sense? All right. Super confusing. Let me start over. You're putting your hands on the table. You're like, I don't get it at all. I'm going to call out a number. Okay. I'm going to say 17. And the 3 of you, not talking to one another, you're just going to choose. Hey, I'm going to hold up 5 fingers on my hand. The person beside you is going, well, I want 7. The other person, I'm going to do 1. You're going to pick your hands up. You're going to count how many and see how close you get to the number I'm saying. Okay. Without talking, you're going to add up all 3 hands, and there's the missing piece. This is why all right, hands on the table. We'll try this and see if it's a train wreck. In my brain, this made a lot of sense. Okay, hands on the table. Pods of 3. Here we go. Your number that you're trying to come up with is 22. 22. So do whatever. Count. Don't talk. Don't talk. All right, on the count of 3, you're going to pick your hands up. We're going to count your fingers. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. What you got? All right, now count them up on your 3. Tell me what number you got. What you guys end up with? 20? I got 20. 17? 17? 20? Okay, it's close. What number do you guys end up with? 29? Okay. And what about you guys? What number do you got? 32? How? There's only 30 fingers.
There's 4.
Oh, there's 4. It's just got awkward. 2 of y'all got some nubs. We want to see. Okay. Now, here's why I want you to do that. Now, put your hands back under the table. Now I'm going to call out another number. This time you get to talk to one another. You get to choose how many fingers you're going to hold up. Okay? So your number now is 15. All right? All right, here you go. On the count of 3, you're going to pick your hands up. 3, 2, 1. And guess what? Every one of them got it. Why is that?
I hope you did. Why is that? It's because you're communicating with one another. It's the same principle here, what we're talking about. This is why things need to be lined up, because if the better communicators you are, the better success you're going to see in ministry, right? All right, number two. Are we willing to adapt and still stay consistent with our values? As we adapt, ask yourselves the question, am I willing to connect through a cultural trend to connect to their world? Are you willing to do that? And listen, I think that that's really a smart strategy. I really do. But I would encourage you to investigate the trend first. Find out what the origin, or kind of where did it originate from? Because most of the time the trends are not just, there's something else underlying. So do your research first before you start posting Little Miss whatever memes are happening right now on Instagram. Okay, again, another trend that I have no idea what it is, but it's everywhere, right? Listen, but here's the thing. As you continue to adapt, make sure to keep your values foundational to your ministry. Be careful not to confuse values with programs and events. Your values should be foundational to your ministry, not your programs. It's the values that's your foundation. The programs come and go. And when it comes to change, ask why and why not. Right? Be willing to evaluate your ministry with the question, why? Why do we do this? And if you can't answer that, make the necessary changes. I've really appreciated, like in our scenario, like I said, I've been out of student ministry as far as like hands and feet on the ground for a year now. And so our student pastor, Jeremy, and our associate, they've had a year under their belt now, so they're starting to kind of spread their wings a little bit, and they're asking a lot of these questions. Why do we do this? Because if you guys are like us, we struck on a few things that we were like a couple years ago that we were like, oh, this is great. So guess what we've been doing for the past 3 years? Oh yeah, man, we're gonna keep doing it. We're gonna keep doing it because it worked. Well, guess what? We're starting to see now that whereas this was awesome 3 years ago, now some of the students kind of checked out. Like, what do you mean we're doing this again? Like, that was great, smearing shaving cream all over our faces whenever we were 8th grade, but now we're juniors. I don't want that. I'm going to stay home. I don't want to deal with that. Right? So constantly ask yourself, why? Why are we doing this? And if you can answer that and it's meeting the goals and your vision of the ministry, keep on. But if not, then change your question. Why not? Spur yourself on to new ideas. Listen, I cannot encourage you enough. Don't be scared to think outside the box. Just because you've done something this way forever and ever and ever doesn't mean it has to be that way forever and ever, right? Think outside the box. This was one of the very few good things for us that COVID helped us out on. Because when the church, when we stopped meeting, we still want to minister to these students. What does that look like? Because everything we knew was gone. And really for us, it really stretched our team to think differently about everything. And it was a good thing for us. So be careful. So ask and evaluate the question, why not? Why can't we do it? And if it's illegal, that's a good answer. Like, what I mean? But do the things, right? Number 3, do I know the right metrics? Do I know the right metrics? Or maybe a better question is do I know what my metrics are? Let me tell you what is not a good metric to use. Field seats. Attendance. It's really weird in church because you can't really gauge someone's sanctification, right? You can't really that's not a quantitative thing. So we default a lot of times to attendance, and there for sure is merit in looking at numbers. But if that is your only metric for success, then man, you're in for a roller coaster of emotions. You're going to feel like you are killing the game one week, and the very next week you're going to think, I need to look for a new job, right? Because especially with students and the busyness of life, seasons, summer versus fall versus spring versus
Like, so there's got to be some different metrics to gauging success. You know, how are we doing with communication? Maybe that's a good metric for you too. How are you doing communicating? One of the things that we do every year is we give out. I noticed we give you this so in case y'all want to follow us on communication. I don't know. But we give every parent that steps into our ministry for the first time, they get this, and we communicate this sheet out to every set of parents that we can, because if you want to know how we communicate, this is it, right? And now I know a lot of you guys are communicating this way, this in these methods as well. But I'm a big proponent of over communicating. Like, a parent cannot come up to me and say, I didn't know about it. Like, and because our team and we have trained and we have taught, I am not afraid to say to parents, no, you just missed it. Because we send out a weekly email. We do this through MailChimp. I think we even have a free account through MailChimp, so it doesn't cost anything. And if you don't do MailChimp, you should, because it does all the work for you. And I like that part, right? It makes these emails look amazing. You import these lists and just click send and it goes, right? We obviously use social media. We use Instagram mainly. We also use Facebook, primarily because the two accounts are merged together. But one interesting thing, I don't know if you guys have seen in your ministry, one of the things that we're seeing is, Facebook for the longest time, that's for the old people, but then you get these like random like friend requests like from the kids just to see what's happening, right? And so like Facebook has become a thing for us that used to not be. We used to have a Twitter, and is Twitter even real anymore? So we cut that off. We do not use Twitter. We have not gone down the road of Snapchat, and we have not gone down the TikTok road yet. And I say yet because that might be a thing, but I would really caution you against those two, for obvious reasons. And so be careful with these. Like obviously you need to use some wisdom with social media. We use it primarily we'll post some pictures of the students, and we use it for, getting information out. Also, we have a Facebook group for just parents. We don't allow students as part of the page, so the parents actually have to answer some questions for us to even give them access to the page. And we share a lot of articles on that page. We design that page for parents to communicate with one another. So we're going to, we're going to the water park. I forgot the name of it because they just changed the name. We're going to Sam's Fun City or whatever the new name is. Like, we're not transporting the students over there. We have parents that are starting to talk amongst themselves. Hey, I could take 4. Okay, my kid's riding with you. And so we really designed it to build some community within our parents. And again, we don't let students on there. If we ever going to talk about something controversial within the student ministry from the platform, we always put that content out there for them to know about well in advance of us saying it. So we did a talk a couple weeks ago on the impact of Roe v. Wade and what that looks like, and why is it caused such division, and kind of looking through that from both contexts. And we told the parents, listen, we're going to present this and tell them, like, this is why this side of the argument believes that it's wrong. And this is why this side of the argument, this is what the Bible says. Like, and come on in. We want to invite you in, and and so we do that. Anytime we're going to talk, if we're going to have any type of conversation about sex, like, that's always something we're going to throw out there for parents to say, listen, we're talking about this. We need to know it. We utilize this parent group for that. We use Remind for just, generally we do that for, Sunday mornings, good morning, can't wait to see you at church. But we do utilize Remind a good bit. We used it more during COVID because social media, it completely, for what we saw anyway during COVID, is our middle schoolers, 7th grade on down, a lot of them don't have social media. And so it's like we're missing 2 full grades here. We saw some cool things happen with that, though, because what we saw was parents starting to come up, and parents would get online and do some activities that we were doing. If we were on Instagram Live, parents would get on with their kids. And so anytime you can get the parents involved, you do that, right? And then, obviously stage announcements, but communication, that is a metric that we use. Like, how are we doing communicating the things? And if a parent misses something, like they're communicating the same things on all these deals. But that is a good metric for you to utilize. How you doing with communication? Volunteers, that's another good metric. We're going to talk a little bit later about volunteers. But that's a great gauge. Set some goals for number of volunteers you are desiring and kind of gauge yourself through that. Different type of events, baptisms, gospel presentations. These are some good metrics to put in place. Again, because if the only metric is attendance, like you're setting yourself up for really up weeks and really down weeks. All right. Now, we're going to talk just a little bit more in a few minutes, just kind of how we do that. But let's look at this last question real quick. How are we helping students navigate their next phase in life? How are we helping students with that? This is a resource that I cannot encourage you guys enough. If you've never gotten a hold of this, you've never done anything with this, the phase project is just a phase. The Orange curriculum puts this out. And this was a result of years and years and years of research. But this helps parents parent through each phase of life better than any other resource that we've ever been able to get our hands on. Now, this book is a lot, to hand to a parent. They're going to say, okay, wait a second. Because this literally goes through, I think there's the technology phases in here. This literally walks kindergarten through senior year in high school. It's phenomenal. But one of the great things about this is they also have developed like little snippet cards. They're called phase cards that we put in the hands of our parents as oftentimes as we can. These things right here are absolutely phenomenal because these little cards just give a real brief snapshot of what's happening with their sixth grader so that parents know, wait a minute, I'm not the only one. Because listen, that's a tactic of safety. To get our parents isolated, feeling like their eighth grader is the only one who used to talk to them and now they won't talk to them at all. Well, you're going to get one of these guys and it's going to say, you know what, one of the things where eighth graders, they like to talk, where they're going to talk to you is at night when they're in the bed and the lights are off. They'll conversate with you then because that feels safe to them. Versus them in the car ride, they're not going to talk to you because they feel, they're in all the emotions or whatever. And these cards tell you what's happening physically, mentally, socially, emotionally with the kid. And we put these in one, you need to know this because of the people, the demographic that you're ministering to, but our parents need to know this. Our parents want the resources. There's just so many resources out there, they don't really go a lot of times. And these are relatively cheap, and we put these in the hands of parents as much as we can. And then it also has this little thing in the back down here. It says for sixth graders, there's approximately 364 weeks and counting until they leave home. That speaks to parents. That speaks to them whenever they pick up their, for us, and with us, my 10th grader, I'm picking this up and it says I only have 156 weeks left. That builds an urgency. It should build an urgency with us, but also with our parents. And so I would encourage you guys to really, 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 really dive into that because that's a resource that our parents need and is super helpful for us. One of the things that this phase project does a great job of is encouraging walking families through big transitions of life. You guys, we in our ministries, we're going to hit 3 major phases in just a short amount of time that we have our students. We have a middle school where they enter in middle school. That's a big phase for parents. That's a big change to jump from elementary to middle school. Then you're also going to have another transition that happens from 8th grade when they enter into high school. And then you also have the transition of, welcome to senior year. We ought to be walking those phases with our families, walking hand in hand with them. We do an event for our incoming 6th graders called Kickstart, where we're partnering with our kids ministry. We literally do it in the same day. where Kids Men, they kind of do a farewell event. They got inflatables and all the things, and pizza and all the deal. While they drop the kids off there, our student pastor, and he is meeting with the parents, and he's giving them all the resources and kind of walking through what student ministry looks like, how it's different than kids ministry, and what are the, kind of giving them ideas of what's to come, walking them, showing them where their kids' connect group rooms are. These are your kids' connect group leaders, these type of things. And then the kids come when they're finished with Kids Men stuff, and then we get to take them bowling and hang out with them or whatever, and just start to get to know just the sixth graders by themselves. I'll tell you, that's a transition from families that we need to walk that through with them. I've got these. We cannot have. You can look at these if you want. There's stacks up here, but I have a sample letter here of what we send out to every new student that's coming into student ministry. We send them all this letter. We do it via old school snail mail and also via email. Same exact letter, but we send it to them. Same thing with freshmen, with families that have kids that are moving from 8th grade to freshman year. And it's got all of this just, kind of talking through, hey, parents, here's some things that are happening in this phase that you need to be paying attention to. Gives them weekly schedules in case we've had somebody fall off in middle school, but they're going to come back with high school. Also, who their connect group leaders are, just so that they can kind of put a face with a name. And then we have one for our seniors when they started senior year. So we try to partner with our seniors in that transition. Another thing we do with our seniors every year is we have this curriculum, if you want to look at it. Our seniors, we transition them off, especially the second half of their senior year. We transition them off from just like a normal, we use D6 is the curriculum we use. That's basically preschool through high school. We transition our seniors off and do Sticky Faith the last semester we have in student ministry. That really focuses in on, okay, we've been teaching you and training you for the past 7 years. And now you're about to head off to college. Like, what does that look like? How do you navigate the party scene in college? How do you find a church when you go to college? How do you wash clothes when you get to college? How do you, it would be alarming to, I always admit, every year, so alarming to us that how many kids, when we say, hey, what is it that you feel you don't feel equipped to do in college? A budget is at the top of the list. I don't know how to manage money. So we spend an entire week walking through like just very surface level type things. So celebrate those phases and walk through that. Now, the reason I'm like laying this information at you is that these things have to be the core and foundation of your ministry, because nothing else that we go through for the rest of our night, if we miss this, if we miss our character, if we miss these types of things, like nothing else practical matters. So I just want to start it off with walking through that as you as a minister and your ministry. Now, I want us to take a quick little break, use the restroom, get some water, and then we come back and we kind of walk through a little bit more of the practical stuff, okay, and volunteers and those type of things, okay? So we'll take about maybe 5-7 minutes, something like that. So grab restrooms right out here, or water, stuff like that's over here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and hop back to it. So I want to run through some things with volunteer recruitment and volunteer retainment, that type of stuff too, and then give you guys some, if you have any questions. Again, if you have any questions throughout this process, just raise your hand and let's knock them out. And also try to have some time at the end to go through this as well. I'm going to talk really fast through this next section, okay? Let me tell you a little bit of background on where this even came from. Whenever I took on my first student pastor job in Alabama, I found myself pretty quick, like on an island. And what I mean by that is I had, when I got to the church, we had Sunday school leaders, but they weren't significantly, as a whole, some of them were, but as a whole, they were not significantly invested into the students' lives for the most part. So here's what my normal Wednesday night would then look like, because I didn't have leaders on Wednesday nights. So we would have our normal service that I had prepped everything for. I'd prep the message, I'd prep the handouts, I'd prep the PowerPoints, I'd prep the games, I'd prepped everything. And then I would head home. And I would help April get the kids in bed. And then I would sit down and I would start thinking of everyone I had not seen that evening. And I was just thinking about it. And then I would spend the next couple of hours texting and calling those students. And this became a big problem for me because, one, it was mentally exhausting. But two, it was super discouraging. Because every time I would come home, instead of celebrating and focusing on who was present, I was focusing on who was not present. And I quickly realized that I needed to make some changes. I was not going to keep up with that pace. And then again, it's just super discouraging, right? So I started doing some research. April was helping me trying to find what are some good leadership development conferences, some books. Again, I felt like I was on an island kind of drowning, really. And like, we just got to have some help, and knew that we need to widen out our volunteer team, but didn't really know what to do. So stumbled upon a resource from Orange called Lead Small, this book here. Many of you probably read this book. If you have not, like, get on Amazon like right now and order this. I cannot recommend this to you. And after reading this, we ordered it and read it and realized, wait, that Orange actually has a conference. So we signed up and went to that conference, and it really completely shifted our focus on volunteer recruitment. This was the game changer for us in student ministry, hands down. And still to this day, this is what we train our leadership team on. We've got a leadership training this Sunday with our new student ministry volunteers, and every single volunteer gets this in their hands. This is requirement number 2. Requirement number 1 is like you actually sign up. You like teenagers. We kind of need you to like teenagers. But then we put this resource in their hands. And a lot of times, honestly, if I'm being real honest with you, a lot of times we'll put this in their hands and we'll say, we need you to read this. And if you can't do what this book is asking you to do, as far as the principles to put in a small group, like, this might not be the best place for you to serve. Like, we feel that passionately about this. And so they read and they apply this. And so, and then each year from that, we take one of the principles in this book and we use that as the baseline of what our theme for the year is going to be. Okay, and we use, so this is just interwoven all throughout everything with our volunteers. So I want to walk you through what the 5 principles of this book is real quick to show you, like, this is what we ask of our volunteers. So the very first one is this: be present. This is not a new concept, right? The early church had 2 foundational truths to its development: Jesus and community, right? So this is not mind-blowing stuff, but the foundational aspect of any small group is to be present. When you choose to be present, it means that you show up predictably, which means that you're there consistently. Every time a small group happens, like, we expect our volunteers to be there. And then when you choose to be present, it also means that you show up mentally. Like, our volunteers show up, they've had long days, just like the students have had long days, but we ask them, like, hey, shut that off at the door and go all in with these students, right? So show up physically and mentally. And that enables them to kind of leave the junk and engage. And we encourage them, when you're there mentally, like, you're a better listener. So listen to the students, because you cannot build community without trust. And the first way that you're going to gain any type of trust with your few in your group is making sure that they know you're going to be present. So be present is the first principle. The second one is to create a safe place. The safer the environment, the quicker that your students are going to open up. So deciding that your group will be a safe place means that you value each person and you affirm them, affirm them, affirm them, affirm them. See, when you choose to make your group a safe place, you choose to lead the group. Like, you're choosing to be the leader, and you're also choosing to guard their hearts. Leading your group to value acceptance. So leading your group to have confidentiality, as long as it's not harmful for the student, right? Lead your group to value honesty. So that is something that we encourage them, like, create a safe place. And so if this is going to be our focus of the year, then we're going to train our volunteers every month on ways to make their group feel safe for these students. Okay. Then the third one is partner with parents. At best, these leaders that you're training, they're going to have temporary influence, but by default, a parent has lifelong influence. And so as a result of that, we should do everything in our power to equip and reinforce the family. So for us, our first challenge every school year is for each one of our leaders to personally reach out to every parent of every student in their group within the first 2 weeks. We ask them to do that, to introduce themselves, to give their parents' contact information, to say to parents like, hey, I'm going to be so-and-so small group leader this year. I want you to have my cell phone number if you ever need me for anything. And also we ask them to we ask our volunteers to ask the parents the following question. Tell me one thing I need to know about so-and-so. I'm telling you something like, this is one thing for us as parents, it's one thing for us to train our volunteers to do it, but when we were on the receiving end of this, and the small group leader is calling us and they're saying, hey, tell me one thing I need to know about Hollis. Tell me one thing I need to know about Merrick. Like we're big proponents of, it takes a village, and these are the people who want our village. And like, yeah, I'm absolutely going to tell you these things, right? And it's working whenever we, on the 13th birthday for our boys, Merrick's is coming up in December, but when Hollis turned 13, that's a milestone birthday in our house. And so we did this thing called a warrior dinner, where we invited men to come in and sit around the table, and we asked Hollis, what do you want? He wanted steaks, man. We made steaks and potatoes. And we asked these men to spend the night, not literally spend the night, but spend the evening just speaking truth over Hollis's life. What are some things you see in his life, some characteristics of Christ you see in his life, and then how can you challenge him to be a man of God as he steps into manhood? And two of those people that Hollis chose to be part of his warrior dinner were small group leaders. We're small group leaders because they made it safe. They were present. They've been there. We ask our volunteers to sign on and roll up with the kids. Ideally, you step in at 6th grade and we don't tell them this on the front end because you're going to freak them out, but we want you there for 7 years. We want you there to roll up with the kids, and so that you see them through the duration of, come on. That's a beautiful thing if you can make it happen, right? So partner with your parents. The other one, the fourth one, is make it personal. Make it personal. You inspire. This means basically you're going to inspire their faith by your example. The example that these leaders are setting for their few through the way they live their personal life is just as important as every other aspect we've talked about and that we will talk about. It is just all these things we talked about, a character. And listen, that means when you see one of your small group leaders knocking back some Bud Light sitting on the beach, you're going to need to go have a conversation with them. It's like, this might not be, and I'm not, listen, we're not going down the alcohol road, but I'm telling you, that is not the example that we want set for these teenagers who can't monitor, they have no comprehension to be able to, one, it's illegal for them to drink, right? But even if they did, they have no comprehension of just a sip here or there, right? So we want to hold our leaders to a high standard because these kids are watching. And if that means we got to ask them to step down, then I am team parent, I'm team kid. I'm going to protect their hearts and protect these families, right? Because the most important thing that these people need to lead is themselves, right? They've got to be, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So these students, they need to see how these leaders prioritize things in their lives. All right, so be present, create a safe place, partner with parents, make it personal. And when all of these are done with excellence, it really sets you up for the overall goal of any group, which is to move them out. Move them out. So you will only be the student small group leader for a short period of time. But in this short time, you need to be focused on their gifts, right? Train your volunteers on ways to identify and encourage them to speak that over their kids that they're pouring into. Who are the potential leaders in the groups? Who are, who are they communicating back to you that, you should start pouring into this person, right? Because see, making disciples is only winning at halftime, right? To win the game, you want to produce disciples who make disciples. So you move them on, you move them to encourage them to start discipling someone else. You move them to serve the church, right? As a small group, we encourage our small groups to go serve together, serve in different aspects of the church, go serve the community, come cut some bushes at the rental house back here. You know what I mean? Like help them, move them out, prepare them to take the gospel to their college. And you know, we just encourage them to rely on their experience. So these 5 principles, man, they've been a game changer for us. And we really hold tight to these and are constantly putting these principles in front of our volunteers all the time, encouraging them to, you know, to do and put in place these things. And if they will do these 5 things, they will be successful, which means, friends, you will be successful. I mean, I don't know the theology behind this. Ryan's way smarter than I am on this, but you basically are trying to equip them to be mini pastors. You want these small group leaders to pastor those kids because ideally, then you in turn, and we're going to talk about this next, your people that you're going to start pastoring are your volunteers, right? You're taking care of the volunteers who are then trickling down to your students. And I realize that context is different. Like some of you, like I've got one volunteer. Well, great. That's a great person for you to start discipling, right? Whatever the case may be, like that's who you're pouring into because that person then is serving as a small group pastor to their few, right? Now, at the end of our training, that when we walk through these 5 principles, we leave them with 5 challenge questions, with the goal being by the end of this year, we want you to be able to answer these questions. I think I said 5. I think it's 4 questions actually that we. Nope, there's 5. Just kidding. We thought you were getting done with me that quick, right? Question number 1 is: do you know their name? Right? When you know that this is important, especially for people like me who is absolutely horrible with names. There's a bunch of buddies in our student ministry, right? Hal, I mean, how you doing, man? It's just there's something I have to work at that, right? But when you can remember their name, it shows honor. So we ask our leaders, like, memorize your roster, learn these kids' names. We give them some pointers on ways to do that within the first few weeks, whether it's name tags or playing games or doing prayer requests, whatever. We give them some principles on how to learn the names. The next one is: do you know what matters to them? Like when you know what that awkward middle school boy in your group, what he likes, and you can communicate to them, like you're modeling friendship to them. And you're also giving them hope that they are worth liking. That's really important. Do you know where they live? Like, and I don't mean like in a creepy way. Like, I don't mean like, their physical address. I mean more lines like their physical context, right? Because when you know where someone lives, hypothetically, like you model empathy. And you also give them hope that they're worth knowing. So you need to take the time to understand your students' and context and where they come from. Another question we want them to be able to answer is: do you know what they've done? There's not a student in their small group that does not have baggage, just like them, right? And chances are, as the group grows, the more comfortable they're going to be with one another, and some of that stuff is going to start becoming more and more relevant. They're going to reveal their junk. But remember, you've created a safe place now, so it's time to show them that it's safe. Because when they share their secrets, you have a chance to model love. And listen, this is big. When they're sharing their junk and their baggage, right? You give them hope, knowing that they think that they can be forgiven. You have a great opportunity to model Jesus and forgiveness to them. So you want to model in a way that replaces shame with hope. And then the last question that we want them to answer is: do you know what they can do? This goes back to moving them out that we talked about earlier. You identify their strengths. You speak life over them. When you know what they can do, you model belief so that you can move them out. Now, once we establish the core values of our leadership and things are bumping along, this is where we have found great benefit then to focus our attention on pouring into the leaders. So once we have all these things in place, in theory, they're taking great care of your students. They're communicating to you the important things about the students. Ideally, they're going to the football game, so you don't have to go to 14 of them, right? Unless y'all are like big football fans, right? But they're doing these things for you because they're in their lives. That gives you great freedom to not have to bounce from event to event to event and exhaust yourself because you've equipped your leaders to do that. So how do we make sure that our leaders are loved on and we're serving them well? So some of the things that we've done is that we've created quarterly hangouts with all of our volunteers. So again, this is, this does not really matter with context because if you've got 2 volunteers, you can do this. If you've got 45 volunteers, you can do this. But we have quarterly hangouts where we might go to an escape room together. We may just have them over to listen, invite them to your house. Like that has been such a win for us. It's just having our volunteers in our home and like us just cooking hamburgers and just hanging out with no agenda, but just hanging out with them, getting to know them. There's something different that happens with people when you allow them into your house. Invite them over, hang out with them, pour into them. We also established a weekly huddle, is what we call it. And we meet with our volunteers 15 minutes before Sunday services and 15 minutes before Wednesday night services. We bring them in, and then we strategically theme each month of this huddle and with a tool that's going to help them win. Okay, we have it for 15 minutes, so it's like at 6:15 and it's go time, whether you're in the room or not. At 6:30 we're done because services are starting, and we use that time to pray over them. We use that time to build community. They start doing this, and after 6 months of them all being in the room every week together, and they're hearing like praying through things and big life changes, and then we're resourcing them with quick little, like, these are not 2-hour trainings. These are 5-minute trainings. Hey, try this, think through this. I actually, I have a handout. I've got just some ideas for you that we utilized in case you guys wanted to see what we did. This was our scope for the entire year for our huddles. And so just want to walk through those real quick. In August, we did a theme called We Are Family. The groups are coming back together, and we're trying to establish relationships with all our volunteers, making the new volunteers feel welcome. And so one of the things that that you can see that I'm not going to read week by week for you there, but we play different games where, again, we are trying to encourage them to get to know one another. We're reviewing the lead small principles. We are showing baby pictures of one another. Again, that whole month is just building community amongst your leaders, okay? September, this is where groups have just started back up, and so everything that we did in September is focused on these leaders getting to know parents. And so we threw some gift cards in there, like we're gonna incentivize you, and I made it a competition, like how many people you text, you get so many points. If you call parents, you get even more points because phones actually work to call. You don't have to just text. And if you make a face-to-face visit, like you got a bazillion points, right? So we try to encourage them to like make that an absolute priority of connecting with parents. Again, there's a Facebook intro where we encourage them to get on that Facebook, the parent page on our Facebook, and introduce themselves. Hey, my name is Dustin. This is my wife, April. Put a family picture up. I like this, that, and the other. Tell them a little bit about themselves. In October, we have on our volunteer team, we have a couple of school teachers, and so we asked them to take over the month of October and literally give teaching tips, classroom management stuff. If you've got a kid that likes to share all the time, and it means this kid over here never gets to talk, how do we shut this one up without hurting their feelings, but giving this one an opportunity to talk, right? What are some ways to quiet the group down? What's the ways to get them engaged? What are some different, so we utilize the resources God's given you, okay? November was focused on gratitude. December says hope for the anxious soul. One of the things we did here, and I would encourage you, if you've got some people that are on your leadership team that are gifted in this, we had a husband-wife team that really had a heart for students dealing with anxiety. And so they literally came and sat down in my office one day with this book, and they're like, hey, we wrote an entire curriculum on helping students deal with anxiety. Can we share it? I was like, tomorrow? And so we utilize those leaders like to train our volunteers. So if you have a volunteer that has some special giftings, give them a month and say, hey, I need you to teach these, whatever it is, right? New year, there's, on the back of the page there, you can see the rest of it. I'm not going to read through all of those because you can read. I'm very confident in it. In May, I did want to identify this. In May, we begin recruiting for the next year because here's the thing, guys. They are your best recruiters. Your volunteers are your best recruiters. And so if your volunteers know that they are cared for and they love what we started seeing, and it took us, I want to be real clear, like this took us probably a good 2 years to get to this spot, but what we started seeing is our volunteers were recruiting leaders for us, where they would come up and say, hey, these 3 people in my Sunday morning connect group, I was talking to them about serving and can you just give them a call? And I'm now calling, just assigning them jobs instead of asking and going through the whole like recruiting, because the volunteers they've done the hard work for me because they know, they feel the community, they love the community. And so they've started recruiting for us. But we start that in May, where we start asking for, hey, what's your commitment for next year? And, the expectation is that they roll up with their students, but life happens. Sometimes they have to step out. So we know by the end of May where the holes are in the ministry so that we have the entire summer to get those, to fill those spots. Our goal is to be fully staffed volunteer-wise by the end of June, middle of July at the absolute latest, with all volunteer training starting the first week in August, so that mid-August we're ready to go. That's generally what our schedule looks like. At that August training with the leaders, we have the entire year scoped out as far as what series we're going to be teaching through on Wednesday nights and what the Sunday morning curriculum looks like. So we're putting in their hands, hey, this is what you're teaching for the entire year. And it's worked out pretty well for us. So anyway, and we can walk through if you have, I know we're running out of time. So if you have any questions on what some of these others mean or some different, things like that, we'll be happy to answer that whenever we get out of here. Last thing I'll mention is this, is once you have your leaders involved in it, I would encourage you to set some big goals for your ministry. Set some goals. Set some goals for them. Set some goals for your students. And then communicate what those goals are. And let that be the driving force behind everything that, a couple years ago was really on my heart, that we need to better equip our students to share their faith. And so we started training them on 3 circles. As a matter of fact, and I'm sure everyone here knows what 3 circles are. It's an evangelism tool. There's a bazillion evangelism tools. That's the one we chose. And started training them on how to share their faith in school and with their family or whatever, walking in and really just using and just going over and over and over the 3 circles. One of the things that we had a difficult time with is that 3 circles isn't a great evangelism tool, but it requires an existing relationship the majority of the time. Like it's real hard to do the 3 circles when you're walking from class to class and you got 3 minutes, right? The bell's about to ring. And that's some of the frustrations we hear from our students. And so we actually had a mission team in Israel, and a local missionary there was sharing with us this model of evangelism they were using in London at the time. It was called this 2+2 model. And I don't know if y'all heard this. And I've got a little more. This is Microsoft Word art at its finest. You're welcome. Only the finest for you, but it works for our students. What we did is we started training them on this 2+2 model. And this 2+2 model, what this does is this kind of sits on the front end of 3 circles. And the way what this is basically teaches the students how to share their story, pre-Christ and post-Christ, share their testimony in 30 seconds or less. And this was really a game changer for us, because what we saw happening is when they were doing this, it really launched them into more developed gospel conversations. And so the way this works is you would encourage your students to come up with 2 words to describe their life pre-Jesus and 2 words to describe their lives post-Jesus. Hopefully those things are opposite of one another, right? So like if mine was,
being super selfish, you would hope that unselfish would be on the other side of Jesus, right? But the way that this form works for our students, we made it as simple as we could. So you literally, like, the way they did it on the mission field is they would be, just walking up to people, hey, can we pray for you? And they say, yes, you can pray for us. And they pray for them. And as soon as they say amen, they start, without even saying another word, in Jesus' name, amen. There was a time in my life when I was super selfish and I would have never looked out for anybody else. But when I understood what Jesus did for me, I put my trust in him. And now I am not a very selfish person. I look for ways to give to others, to serve others. Do you have a story like that? Well, you just shared your entire story in a 30-second window. And you put the ball in their court for them to say, yeah, I do have a story like that. Oh, cool. Can you tell it to me? Or no, I don't have a story like that. Hey, well, I would love to tell you something that's helped me whenever I was having a hard time. I'm just going to show you real quick. It's just 3 circles, and it launches you into the 3 circles evangelism strategy. This was a game changer for us because it empowered the students to feel like they started with gospel conversation walking from class to class. So when we saw that and saw the students like really getting into this, we were like that. So we decided like that was going to be one of our goals, is that we were going to encourage our students to have gospel conversations, and we wanted to put a number on that. And so this is where I would encourage you to really look at your student ministry and really dream big, like something that only God could do. And so if you have, say, 10 students in your student ministry, you would think, well, what if every student had 1 gospel conversation a week? And then we multiply that by a month. And then we multiply that out by 12. And we say, and I can't possibly do that math right now. I'm going to though, hang on. So that's like almost 500 gospel conversations that you would encourage your group of 10 to have in a year. Well, that sounds crazy until you start saying to them, no, that actually just means you just have 1 a week. That's it, just 1 a week. And so we did that with our students. And then we said, you know what, out of that, we would hope that some of them would come to know Christ, right? Like, we're doing what Jesus says, and so we kind of think he's going to honor that. And so what we did is if we set a number, whatever that number was, even if like 5% came to know Christ, what would that look like? And so we actually made a cross, and you guys could do the same thing. It's nothing fancy. It was a cross that let's see. This is what it looked like. It's literally a black frame, and it's got a bunch of like light sockets in it. Totally stole this from Passion City Church. No shame, right? But it just had light sockets in it. And so we challenged our students every week, like, have the gospel conversations. And we expect this cross to result in people being baptized because they put their hope in Jesus. And every time they're baptized, we're going to give them a light bulb, and they're going to put it in there. And you guys are going to get to see it. We're going to fill this cross up. And it took us, this was right before COVID, but it started looking like this, where kids are giving their life to Jesus, and we're baptizing them, and they're celebrating. And now their friends are coming to watch. Hey, what is this about? And there's this excitement going. And I tell you this not to brag. I'm telling you this because if you set the bar, they will hit it. They're going to hit the goals you set for them. And so they are amazing people. Like, don't discount them because they're teenagers, man. Challenge them. Push them to it. Set goals for your leaders because, again, without vision, the people perish. No, lay that out there for your volunteers. Hey, here's where we're going, and we're going to do this year, and I need you guys on board with it. And so what ended up happening, unbeknownst to us, is our small group leaders would go into their group, and the very first thing they would say to their group, hey, we're glad you guys are here. Raise your hand if you had a gospel conversation. Like, they were doing that on their own, and then they'd write the number up on the board. Some of them they created such a safe place that they were literally walking person about, Cole, did you have a gospel conversation this week? And I'll tell you something, if you come up to me and you're going to tell me, I know for a fact you're going to ask me that question, like that puts a little pressure on. And maybe that's a weird motivation, but like if that's what it takes for somebody to come to know Christ, then make me uncomfortable, right? And so I say that just to say, man,
challenge your people, pour into them, love them, set goals, set them up to win. You want your leaders to win because listen, friends, when they win, you win. When your volunteers win, you win. And that's how you set yourself up for the long haul. Now, that is a lot of information in a short amount of time. There's a stack of papers over here that if you would like that we give at our volunteer training for our volunteers. There's a Wednesday night and a Sunday night or Sunday morning layout there to where we say to our volunteers, like, here's an ideal schedule. Here's how you can, you have an hour and a half. Here's how we recommend you, or not an hour and a half. You have an hour on Sunday mornings. Here's how we recommend you breaking that hour down. Use 5 minutes for this, 10 minutes for this. Use this game. So those are things that we've used in the past, just in case y'all wanted to look at that, see how that's structured up. But anyway, so I got 3 minutes for questions. Anyway, anything that you guys, I have my card up here. And so any of these resources, I do want to tell you, I have a resource that if you would like it, I could not print it off because it has too many pages, but that we were given when we went to the Orange Conference this past year. It's called a New to Ministry Bundle. And in this would be, now for some of you guys that have, have an established thing, you probably already have a lot of these things but in place, but if you don't, and it's literally a packet that has, and it has a calendar in there for you to plan out a year ahead. It has parent emails that are already written for you. It is literally, it's got volunteer application, it's got job descriptions, anything you would need to start the ministry from scratch. This thing has it. I can email it to you. It's going to come in a zip file. It's amazing. But I couldn't get my hands on 35 zip files to make, or thumb drives to get all the stuff on there. And it was going to be a stack of papers like this. And so none of y'all want to go home with that. And so if you would like that, if you'll just shoot me an email on my business card right there, I will be happy to email that to you. And that's a free resource Orange gave us. That's got its valuable number of resources there. So shoot me an email. I'll be happy to send that stuff over to you.
I think so. Hey, we also want you to know the book that Dustin mentioned. We got your, we know what churches are here, and so we're going to purchase this and send this to your church. And so you don't need to purchase this unless you already have it. But we are going to take it. We'll purchase that. So we expect that to get delivered to your church, and so we'll ship it right there to you. But any other follow-up stuff, I know Dustin has much more. Any other resources, make sure you be able to pick those up and ask him any questions. And so even beyond tonight, we know you want to marinate on some of the stuff that's been mentioned tonight, a lot to soak in. Even as you're brainstorming it with your leaders, we can talk to them later. So Dustin, be happy to walk with you later after that. And again, after tonight, if you'd like us to come in and kind of help you, what does this look like? Very detailed. We're happy to do that. We do that all the time, and we're happy to walk alongside your church. But before you have any questions, Jeff?
Just real quick, under July, you have access information. Can you just explain that to everybody?
Yeah.
'Cause that's like a cheat code.
Yes, it really is. It really is. And you probably could explain it better than even me. Access is it's an online resource that it's got unlimited articles on there. And so a lot of times what we would use with that is that we would print off articles that may be dealing with walking students through transgender conversations. And there's, it is a cheat code of articles and resources available. And so we would just kind of pick one thing every week to kind of walk through. So there's not, I don't really have it. It just kind of would depend on what the hot button issue is of the moment that the leaders are needing. And listen, the more community you build with the leaders, the more they're going to share with you what they need. We didn't have to go searching for this information because we were constantly being, hey, you got any good resources on talking about a student that's struggling with this? So anytime that you can bet if one of them's reaching out to you, that many of them are having the same questions. And so what we would do is just, if they're asking, we're delivering. That is our job, is to equip them. Access is an amazing resource to do that.
And make sure what was mentioned earlier was that Download Youth Ministry is another great resource. I know you mentioned Orange, D6, and several of the great ministries. Sticky Faith, another one that's out there. So we'll do a follow-up email with a lot of stuff that was mentioned tonight, and we'll make sure y'all get all of that as well. Hey, thanks so much for coming. So we continue to serve y'all in any way that's what we want to do. Kind of help the church to be the church. And hope you'll have a safe time going home. Appreciate you coming.
Yep.
Y'all dismissed.
Thank you, guys.